Welcome to Born to be Barefoot. I'm your host, Stuart Gordon, with my co-host, Katie Suyuki.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Born to be Barefoot, powered by Barefoot Science. Great progressive insoles. If you haven't done it yet, check it out. I'm Katie Suzuki. I'm your co-host for today. And unfortunately, Stu couldn't make it with us today. So Stuart is a little bit busy, but we have a great sub in today. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Scott Griswood. Scott is a sports science technologist who is currently testing Xero Shoes personally and with his Optigate systems. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, doing great. And we have a very special guest on today. Anybody who loves walking in bare feet or wants to protect their feet while they're walking in bare feet, then you need to look up this company. You need to look up this guy. We have Steven from Xero Shoes. Steven, how you doing today?
I could use a nap, but otherwise no complaints.
Hey, you can't use a nap. That's a great one. Yeah. All right, Steven, Xero Shoes. So if those of our listeners that don't know Xero Shoes, they're foot-shaped shoes, right, Steve?
Well, I'll say it this way. Yes is the easy answer, but the slightly bigger answer is we're making footwear that's going to give you the closest thing to a barefoot experience based on what you're doing, the activities you're doing and what you may need. So for example, if you're a trail runner, you might need something with a tiny bit more traction or a tiny bit of protection if you haven't gotten hip to being able to run barefoot on crazy rocky trail surfaces. And we're really, the way I like to say it is, we're actually, even though we're technically a shoe company, what we're doing has nothing to do with footwear. It has to do with feet. It has to do with using your body correctly. And it just so happens when you understand what's necessary to use your body correctly or what it looks like when you're using body correctly, the footwear you end up designing looks a lot like what we do because it's what human beings have been doing for most of the time there have been human beings.
That makes sense. Now, this whole kind of dream of Xero Shoes, right? You and your wife are the owners, right? And
correct.
Founders.
Correct.
Is it correct?
My wife is the reluctant co-founder. So when I built a website against her better wishes, in fact, we had the opportunity to build a website to help to start selling these do-it-yourself sandal kits that I was making for and with people. She told me, "Yeah, do not do this. This is a waste of time. Not going to make any money. There's other things we're doing. Do not build that website." And I said I wouldn't, and then she went to bed, and I did. And so. But once the business immediately took off, she's a brilliant finance and operations person, and I'm a marketing product person. So she, with the appropriate hand gesture, said, "Okay, I'm all in." And so then we really started the business full steam ahead about 13 years ago.
Yeah, but it was like a necessity to you, right?
Yeah.
You come from a running background that you said you took a 30-year hiatus from.
Yeah, let's call it this way. There are people who say, hey, I stopped smoking, or I stopped for a while. And I go, what do you mean? They say, well, I was smoking, then I stopped, then I'm still smoking. It's like, well, you're still a smoker. So I guess I'm a runner who just took a break. I was a sprinter growing up. There was no opportunity for me to do that in college where I went to school. And I never thought about it again until I was 45 when a friend told me, there's a whole master's track and field circuit. It's like, what? And this was 17 years ago, I guess. And I had no idea, or 15 years ago. And I had no idea about that. But I loved the idea of getting back into sprinting. So I was getting injured constantly for the next 2 years. And a friend suggested I try running barefoot to see if I learned anything. And in short, what I learned is that I had a form problem that I couldn't feel in regular shoes because they had too much cushioning, too much support, all those other things that people think you need. Mm-hmm. But when I took those shoes off, the form problem was obviously and instantly apparent. And more importantly, by just paying attention to that, it naturally corrected itself. So my injuries went away. I became faster for the last 15 years. I've been a Masters All-American sprinter. That means for men in my age group, I'm one of the fastest men.
That's awesome. Fastest man in America.
One of, right now, I think I'm the top 12 in the US for my age group for men over 60. So, or more accurately, 60 to 64.
Wow. So anyone out there, it just proves keep the dream alive, right?
Just get out there and have fun, really.
Wow. Yeah. That's the most important thing, right? If we're not having fun.
Yeah. If you're not having fun, you're not going to keep it up. So go have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree to that for sure. So like what kind of injuries or like you had a couple of major injuries, right? So like what were they kind of specifically that you were battling there?
Oh man, you name it. I pretty much tore, sprained, or had in some other way damaged pretty much every muscle from my butt down to my toes. So I was getting calf sprains, hamstring tears, quad tears. I had stuff with my piriformis. I had things with oh come on, it's a real. I had a popliteal tear. Most people don't even know what the popliteus is.
No, I don't know what that is.
Yes, I had all sorts of foot and ankle issues. But the biggest ones that would take me out would be some sort of tear. And what was going on was that I was overstriding. Is the biggest thing is my foot was landing too far in front of my body. And if you do that, especially as a sprinter, that's where your hamstrings and your glutes are in the weakest position. And so I was landing in a weak position and putting the most strain on those muscles, and they were just tearing on a regular basis. And the interesting thing is my left leg was worse than my right leg. So when I did that first barefoot run, which, by the way, as a sprinter, I had never run more than a mile like during a warm-up, and I hated every moment of that. But my first barefoot run, I was so intrigued and so curious, and I was experimenting with my gait. Like, what if I run faster? What if I run slower? What if I land on my foot this way or that way? What if I run at the same speed but more steps per minute or fewer steps per minute? What if I run with the same steps per minute, faster or slower? I mean, like anything I could think of.
Sorry, Steven, and is this on a track? Is this like pretty controlled environment on track?
It's on every surface you could think of. It was on, we were just a whole bunch of us. It was on a trail and on the roads and on grass and over a wooden bridge and on a track. I mean, you name it. It was every surface you could find. Mm-hmm. And at the end of this run, someone had and I could have kept going, but we all decided to stop for some reason. And someone had a GPS watch on. And I said, how far was that? And she goes, that was like 5.5K. I went, sorry, what? I mean, I had no idea, but I ended up with a blister on the ball of my left foot. And many people I have found, if they were in that situation, would have said, see, this doesn't work. I got a blister. For whatever reason, my thought was, how come my right foot's fine? And it was experimenting with that the next week when I still had a gaping hole in the ball of my left foot. I figured, let me pay attention to what the good side is doing, because if I can figure that out, maybe I can stop doing the thing that caused the gaping hole in my foot. And without anything conscious, just by paying attention to the good side, the quote bad side kind of got the hint. And literally within one step, I stopped overstriding. I stopped pulling the ground. My running got faster, easier, lighter. Everything felt good. And it just stuck that way from that point on.
Well, I guess when there's a big gaping hole in the bottom of your foot, then it's a reminder of like, okay, let's get this better, right?
Yeah, highly motivating.
So I'm curious, Steve, did you have a leg length discrepancy as well?
No.
Okay.
And just to adjust that really quickly, for running, unless you have a major leg length discrepancy, and I have a friend who had his femur replaced and they got the wrong one and it's 1.5 inches too short. I mean, many people, when they talk about a discrepancy, it's, millimeters. Running is basically hopping from leg to leg. And so there's no leg length discrepancy prevents you from running. In fact, my friend Josh with the too short femur, he says all he has to do is he knows his shorter leg just cycles faster. So he just has to adjust that his legs don't move at the same speed. But ideally, he just finds the side of a road where his short leg is on the high side of the hill.
Oh, okay.
And that takes care of everything.
No,
walking is a challenge.
Is accounting for it.
That's right. Walking is a challenge. Running is not a problem.
That makes sense.
Awesome.
You see him just go down the one side of the hill, bike back up.
Exactly.
So is running kind of your main sport that you still do, Stephen? Are you getting into any other sports right now?
My other sport is called stress. My heart rate goes up, my blood pressure goes up, I start breathing heavy. Just, that's called running a rapidly growing company. But with Xero Shoes, I only have time for helping run the company, making dinner, relaxing, and then running. That's it.
So what type of training are you doing right now?
Well,
why don't you take us through a typical Stephen training day?
Well,
when you get to train.
A typical one, sprinters are a weird bunch. So the key to sprinting is running fast. I know that sounds silly, but the point is there's no amount of running slow that helps you learn to run fast. So there are a number of things that I do that are all about helping run faster. Some of it is a fast and very dynamic warm-up. My warm-up takes 12 minutes, 13 minutes. And, but that's not quite right. It's basically 2 minutes of actual movement and then 10 minutes of resting in between those 5 to 10 second bouts that are the dynamic drills. And then some version of just accelerating at full speed and holding full speed as long as I can for 10 or 20 meters, and doing doing two things: timing those 10 meter or 20 meter fly-ins, and essentially once I'm not running at least 95% of my fastest speed. I know that sounds a weird way of saying it. So in that 10 meters, let's say, if I run 10 meters in a second, if at some point I'm running that 10 meters in 1.05 seconds, then I'm done for the day. So, but I'm also doing video analysis where I'm just looking to see where I can still improve my form, because sprinting, it's tricky to get it perfect. In fact, no one ever can. But I'm still, after all this time, working out a couple of habitual glitches in my sprinting form that hopefully will make me a little faster before I inevitably start getting slower and slower, because that's what happens as you get older and older as a sprinter.
Mm-hmm. So are you doing this in a gym setting? So that you're using like a dartfish or a...
No, just on the track for that. And then I do have a nice home gym. And so other than when I'm on the track, when I walk by, I do a couple of aggressive glute or hamstring exercises. Like if anyone knows, do you know the Nordic hamstring curl? You know this one?
Yeah.
Okay. For anyone who doesn't, basically kneel down, something holds your heels to the ground, keeping your body as straight as you can, lean forward until ideally, you're flat on the ground, and then you pull yourself back up. Mm-hmm. It's super, super difficult, and it's all about hamstring strength, eccentric hamstring strength, which is important.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten really good at that, which I'm very proud of, because many people can't do it at all, let alone 61-year-old people. So I like to show that one off. And then some other glute related things and some plyo things of, box jumps, of jumping onto and off of tall boxes, and glute extension exercises as well. And then I do some like bench press and bicep stuff because I'm vain.
Why not? Or the Nordic hamstring exercise, though, that's like, we had a guest come on, Joe Vecchioni, and he worked a lot with Canada Soccer.
Yeah. And
he was saying that these girls, they always say, I want to be fast. But what they never focus on is the deceleration, because they have to be able to decelerate really fast, right? And that's a perfect exercise where you're preparing your body to do that. He's saying that's where they're getting injured on that,
Well, you're actually decelerating with every stride. In other words, as your leg is coming forward and your heel starts to extend out, you're actually using your hamstring to slow your leg from kicking out all the way before it comes down to the ground. And so that motion there of just literally slowing down the extension of your knee, basically your leg getting straight, that's one of the biggest places where you're going to put strain on your hamstring as well, because your leg is moving very fast and your hamstring has to respond very fast. And sometimes it's literally a muscular problem. Sometimes it's neurological. Your brain just isn't getting the signal to the hamstring at the right time, and you end up under additional strain. But I can tell you, just FYI, it's been, I've been basically, barefoot or in Xero Shoes now for just shy of 14 years. And since that change in my form, I've had maybe like one time where I tweaked something and it put me out for 2 training sessions. I've basically been uninjured for 14 years. And for a sprinter, that's pretty unusual.
That is totally unusual.
Yeah.
Can I ask you what shoe do you sprint in?
You can, and I'll answer. So I developed a shoe called the Speed Force, and I developed this with a guy who had been at Nike for 30 years, working directly with Bill Bowerman, trying to get them to make footwear that function the way human feet function. And he said, there's 15 points you have to do to make a shoe that actually works the way human feet do. Nike has done 1.5 of them, and they'll probably never do any more. And so we developed this shoe. One of Mike's favorite things is to find ways they were making footwear before the advent of certain kinds of technology. So this particular shoe is basically 3 panels. There's the panel on the inside of your foot, the panel that's on the outside, and then the tongue of the shoe becomes the sole of the shoe, becomes the heel of the shoe. I know it's hard to get that picture in your head, but then we did that. You can literally sew this by hand with 3 pieces of fabric, or do it on a sewing machine in 5 minutes. And then we made that shoe. And then I took our do-it-yourself sandal kit and just strapped that on my foot on top of that little shoe. And me and two other runners went, this is the best running shoe we've ever had. It weighs nothing. It's just like Barefoot, but you're getting something that looks more shoe-like instead of sandal-like. And so I train in that and compete in that. It does not have spikes. And I have found that spikes do not offer any inherent benefit on a modern track surface. And I'm working on actually a sprinting spike that would offer some benefit compared to the thing I'm currently wearing. That's a bit of a skunkworks project that we're playing with right now.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah.
But just to make one other point that I didn't make. So the Speed Force is basically our closest to Barefoot shoe or performance shoe. So it weighs about, for men's 9, it's like 5.5 ounces, ridiculously flexible. The sole is about just 4.5 millimeters of our really durable rubber. And there's just nothing else in it. It's basically a sprinting spike without all the technology that doesn't actually work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, right. Well, like I was sponsored by Nike for a long time. And, I've only kind of recently in the past, I guess, 3-4 years have been going into more foot-shaped shoes. And, like once you go into foot-shaped shoes, you're kind of like, like.
You go back.
Do you see any of these, like, Adidas, Nike, like, do you see them moving towards a foot-shaped tech, like anything of that in the future? Or are people just, do you think people are just so pigeonholed into what a shoe's supposed to look like?
Well, there are a couple of angles of this. One is what you said. People are kind of used to what a shoe looks like. So the challenge when you're making something foot-shaped is to make something that is foot-shaped for the most feet possible. You can't make something for everybody because there are some edge cases, both people who have really narrow feet or really, really wide feet, or different shapes of their foot in a way that, you can't accommodate everyone. And the other thing you want to do is make it so things don't look clownish. I mean, if you want to make something that fits, actually, I was going to say fits everyone, but that's not true. Because if you have people with narrow feet, and there are some people who have just genetically narrower feet, if you make something super, super wide that looks clownish, they won't be able to wear it at all. So you have to find that happy medium. So that's one part. The second part regarding the big shoe companies, if they all went foot shaped, there'd be so few, because it's more than just foot shaped. If they went foot shaped, if they went zero drop, if they made it so the heel was at the same height as the ball of the foot, if they got rid of much of the padding that doesn't actually protect you, that's counterintuitive. We can talk about that later, perhaps. But if they basically made footwear the way feet work, they'd be indistinguishable from each other and from us. And so they'd have no point of differentiation, most likely.
Okay.
And so they can't go there. Like, one question is, how come New Balance fits a little wide, Nike fits a little narrow, Saucony fits and it's only because they deliberately make their shoes so they don't fit certain percentage of the population, because that's the only way they can differentiate themselves from each other.
Into that niche market of whatever
your foot
they're trying to fit.
Correct. So like Merrill, in the early Barefoot days, Merrill used to call me, hey, we have a new Barefoot shoe. Do you want to try it? I went, well, you make your stuff too narrow across the instep and the midfoot. And they said, well, but do you want to try it? No, I'm saying I can't get it on my foot, so I can't wear it. They go, well, do you want to try it anyway? I said, dude, if you send it to me, I'm just going to sell it on eBay because I can't wear it. They said, well, do you want us to send you a pair? It's like, yeah, okay, sure. So they sent it to me. I sold it on eBay. But we've heard, not directly to my face, but pretty close, one degree of separation away. We've heard a friend of ours who was looking to invest in our company and didn't, because he had the opportunity to make $1 billion in a 5-minute phone call, and that was the last anybody heard from him. But he was calling around his friends who were executives at all these big shoe companies saying, what do you think about what Xero is doing? And every one of them had the same response. This whole natural movement idea is totally legit, but we can't do it because if we did, we'd be admitting we've been lying for 50 years. Now, if you wonder about that statement, all you have to do is go to the Nike website and look at their, I forget what they call it. I could find it if you want me to, or we could get it for the show notes. There's a page they have about how they're trying to improve, people's health and longevity and their running and everything else. At the very bottom of the page are the results from a study they did. In this study, they tested their best-selling running shoe, the Zoom Structure 22, against a new shoe they developed, the React Infinity Run. And the way they publicized it was that the new shoe reduced injuries by 52% in a 12-week training program. Well, it's true, but then you have to look at the numbers, which amazingly they published. In the best-selling shoe in this 12-week study, over 30% of the people got injured wearing that shoe. In the new shoe, only 14.5% got injured. So injury rates don't stay consistent over 12 weeks. They tend to go up over time. And injury rates are typically reported as up to between 50 and 80% of runners and marathoners get injured every year. And Nike just proved that same thing. Their own study showed that same thing. And my response is, that's the best you can do after 50 years of R&D?
Yep.
Wow.
It's reprehensible.
So how did the other barefoot type shoe companies differentiate themselves from you?
Well, I'll say it the other way around about how we're differentiated. There are a couple things. They all fit a little different. That's one thing. So there is that subtle thing, similar to, again, New Balance being a little wider in the forefoot, still with pointy toes, by the way. So they're wider at the ball of the foot, but then they squeeze your toes together, which blows my mind. So there's a little bit of that. Some are, again, a little wider, more paddle shaped than ours. We have a broader selection of products for pretty much everything you do. So we have now 39 different styles of shoes, boots, and sandals
Yeah.
for casual and performance use. We make our soles with a highly durable rubber. So we have our 5,000 mile sole warranty, and we're more affordable. So our biggest competitor is a company called Vivo Barefoot out of the UK. And typically our shoes are between 50 and 100% less expensive if you look at the comparable shoes.
Mhm.
Now, that
Yeah,
said,
but-
yeah, they are making some shoes that are like high-end fashion level kind of stuff. That's just not who we are. So in fact, one time a few years ago, we talked about working together in some way where we would handle the performance stuff and they would handle the fashion stuff. And we would do sandals and they wouldn't touch it because we make really good sandals. But we couldn't figure out a way to make that work for everybody.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So I initially thought that the bigger shoe companies would transition to a barefoot style shoes when you guys took over X% of the market.
Well, it's an interesting question because a number of these companies back in 2010 did go into more natural movement footwear, but then pulled out because they couldn't tell two stories at the same time. How do you tell the story? You need all this cushioning, and at the same time tell the story you don't need any of that.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a problem.
Very nice.
When people say to me, what would happen if Nike and Adidas started doing the same thing you're doing? I have two answers. One is, cool, we won. Because it's not about us and our company. This is about doing the right thing for people. It's doing the right thing for your feet and the rest of your body. So if we change the world and everyone starts doing the right thing, I'm thrilled. I don't need to be the guy on these podcasts. I don't need people to recognize me in airports. I don't care. We're just trying to change the world. And not because we think it's the right thing to do, because we know it because of the experience of our over 1 million customers and from us, and then, another million, many millions plus from all the other companies combined, and the people who are just going barefoot, and the research. I mean, it's just unequivocal. I have this fantasy of doing a presentation or being on a panel discussion where I pull out a giant stack of paper, like 2 feet high. I go, this is a printout of the top 200 research papers demonstrating the value of natural movement. And then I pull out a stack equally high. This is the top 200 papers about how the design of the modern athletic shoe actually causes problems and doesn't do what they say. And now let me pull out the stack showing the benefits of the modern athletic shoe. And oh yeah, there is no stack. So that's, another piece of the puzzle. But the other answer to what would happen if, the big companies jumped on this boat, people think that it would somehow put us out of business. But I go, well, you've noticed there's more than one shoe company right now, right? That all basically do the same thing. They just market different, things look a little different. There's always a way. And so it would just validate what we've been saying for however long we've been saying it by the time they decide to jump on board. And that would give us an extra boost because we're the authentic one. Between Vivo Barefoot and us, we're the ones who've been doing this for real without compromise for the longest period of time. And so I think the competition would be great. Now, I'm not hoping they do it tomorrow, obviously, but we could work with that. And it's interesting, by the way, if you do a search in Google Trends for barefoot shoes and just look at how many people have been searching for that term over the last 20 years, you'll see in the US, there was a spike in 2009 when the whole barefoot boom kind of kicked off. And if you call that 100%, that's the highest it's ever been. We're at about 87, 88% now. So we're only 12% off the high. If you then switch that search to worldwide, we're at the highest volume of search for barefoot shoes ever. So this is trending. And this, I know I'm giving a super long answer to what seemed like a simple question. What would be ironic and perfect is if one of these big companies would work with us, whether they bought us or whatever, and keep us on the other side of the equation. Like, some company that does big, giant padded shoes, if they also owned the company doing the exact opposite, if the pendulum swings from big cushiony things back in our direction, then they win no matter what. And even more, the marketing would be brilliant. Just, put me out on the road with any of their guys and we'll just have a knockdown, drag out fight about which shoe is best and fight. And it always gets a lot of attention because people want to know what shoe is best.
Of course.
But all I have to do is ask questions like, where's your proof? And they never have any.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, I think, especially being someone who, I also do a lot of snowboards, right? And with snowboard company to snowboard company, it can't be the same. But a lot of consumers now are going in to see what the backstory is, right? They care about, who Steven is. They care that you actually did the sprinting. They care, and consumer, their opinion is now it's not just companies being like, hey, we're just going to tell you what you want to do. Like consumers are having a lot more influence on, how the marketing strategies are going for these companies, right? So is that something that you kind of push out there? Are you put out there I do it. I own the shoes. I develop them.
Yes, and I'm trying to make it less about me as we go on and on and on. A, because I don't have that kind of time, and B, because it's while I'm an important part of the story, it's not about me, and so there's a fine balance there. But to your point, our company, we are very actively engaged with the community. We're the way our product line has developed is from people saying, like you said, I can't wear anything else, but now I need a shoe for this thing that you don't currently do. And so that's how we've developed the product line, is based on people saying, what am I going to do if I have to, go to work and I need a leather shoe for work? Okay, well, we just made a leather casual shoe for you. It's like, oh, great. So we're very, very involved and active and engaged with our customers, and even people who aren't our customers, just people who are into this whole idea. We want to be a resource for them as well. And that's, like you said, super, super important. And if I could get my workday down to about half of what it is, and that's all I'm doing is sort of, I don't even want to be the face of the brand, but sort of being out there, being an evangelist for what we do, a legit evangelist, that'd be super fun. I just got to get a bunch of things off my plate to do that.
Well, it's obvious that your core values of why you started it and what, how helping humans move properly is that's going to carry through, even though you might not be there being like, I'm there. Your values, which is
well. I have to tell you, there's another part to this kind of funny. On YouTube, someone commented. It was actually a footwear designer from Europe. It's like, you don't know anything about footwear. You don't know anything about biomechanics. You don't know anything. It's like he was basically accusing me of being a complete idiot, which I always find very entertaining. And I said, so first I don't know anything about footwear. You're suggesting that I've learned nothing in 13 years, and the people in our company who have a combined total of 300 years of experience in footwear, they know nothing either. And so he dropped that point. And he said, you don't know anything about biomechanics. So do you know that when I was at Duke, I did research on cognitive aspects of motor skill acquisition, and I would take the master's degree physical therapy test that my friends who were in that program had just for fun, and I could pass them without ever studying for that stuff because I just have a knack for that. Do you know that I've taught everything from gymnastics to Zen archery to yoga to Tai Chi to running to tap dancing I'm like good at picking this stuff up. Do you know I was a former All-American gymnast?
You're that guy. Don't bring him to the party.
That was it. It's like literally
on my team at the party.
Yeah, no, I'm horribly obnoxious at that party. I just have a knack for some of this stuff. And he dropped it, and his position was, yeah, but these big companies spend millions of dollars on R&D every year. And then I quoted the Nike study. I said, yeah, they spend millions of dollars, but they haven't been able to make anything better in 50 years.
I'm quite surprised that they actually printed those numbers. Like
they didn't for 3 years. They were hiding it for about 3 years. It was shocking.
Yeah,
but sorry, they took one part of the response out of what they put on their website. The question was, what changed? What made that shoe better? And their answer was, we removed many of the protective features.
Oh,
they took that sentence out.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So speaking of backstory, what was your background before you entered into this adventure?
um, oh yeah. I was mostly happily retired. My wife and I did some clever real estate investing starting in 2000, and by 2006, when my last friend said, "Hey, I'm getting into real estate," my wife and I went, "Oh, we're screwed. We got to start getting out of this." So it was like 1999 in the stock market all over again. So what we thought was going to be passive income for the rest of our life turned into a small windfall, but then we needed a job. We had about 2 months worth of money left. And I had started a search engine marketing business because I've been an internet marketer since 1992. And when I was given the opportunity the opportunity to be part of a book about barefoot running, the guy who was writing the book was Michael Sandler. He said, if you had a website for this little sandal making hobby of yours, I'd put you in the book. And so again, I rushed home and pitched this idea to Lena, who told me I was an idiot and I shouldn't do it. And then I did it. So, but the next day I said, look, this will be a case study for our search engine marketing business. Because in about 3 months, I'll be able to own the keywords that we care about, drive a bunch of traffic, and maybe we'll get a car payment out of this. And I was very wrong on both counts. It only took me about 4 weeks until I owned every keyword that you would want. And then it was very clear this was going to be our full-time job. We had no idea that we would be, as of last year, an almost $50 million company selling shoes to people in 99 countries and having 80 employees and an 83,000 square foot warehouse and all the things that we have. We never imagined that. And ironically, we still think of ourselves as a startup because there's so much more that we want to do that even where we are right now, it just seems like it's just beginning. So yeah, I was planning to never have to work again. And now I've never worked harder in my life than I have in the last 13 years.
Wow. Those kind of stories are always inspiring to me to see somebody, come up with a concept and bring it to fruition. And even more so when, the person is not necessarily an expert in that field. Like, do you have a degree in kinesiology or anything like that? Or
no, even more. So, I had no experience with footwear, but the joke is some of the patents we have and some of the design elements in our shoe. I said to this one footwear designer who I'd become good friends with, I said, why has no one thought of this before? And he said, because you don't know anything about footwear. You're thinking of things from a different perspective than the people who are just reinventing the wheel over and over and over.
Yeah, because you obviously know movement, like all these things that you've done, gymnastics, Tai Chi, archery, like yoga, movement.
I'm good at analyzing what the common factor is or the key factor for certain movements. So, and I don't know why, but I spent some time in the lab with a guy named Dr. Bill Sands. He was the former head of biomechanics and engineering, I think, for the U.S. Olympic Committee. But then he got a lab at a school in Western Colorado. And I just sat watching video with him at video he had taken of runners at 500 frames a second in various ways. And I'm just analyzing it with him going, oh yeah, here's what's going on here. And he's like, yep. So it's just, for whatever reason, I got a good eye for things like that. It's probably some version of ADD.
Probably it seemed to work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you're in Colorado. And Colorado, in my mind, when I talk to people, that's kind of like the mecca of this barefoot.
Yeah,
run. A lot of the big companies are a lot of the big shoe-shaped companies are out of there, right? Ultra, I think, is out of there.
Well, Ultra was in Utah, but then they got bought by the VF Corporation, which is in Denver. And then Lems is right down the street. And friendly. We get together for dinner, we hang out. And so there's 3 of us here right now, which I guess would be the highest concentration in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's because barefoot people, they're quirky. Do you have any good stories of meeting these barefoot, constant barefoot people?
Well, I don't get out much. So my stories are, things that have happened to me more than bumping into other barefoot people, but I have a few. One is, I spend a lot of time bare feet in places like Costco and Home Depot and whatever my other Whole Foods, King Soopers, which is a local grocery store. I mean, it's part of a national chain, but the only place I've ever been hassled is Whole Foods. Interesting.
Really? Because I was going to say, I'm Whole Foods probably be the only one there. You're oh, sweet man, come in here, they're bare feet.
No, my joke is, why are you hassling me? That woman's breastfeeding her dog. So, it's Or literally, I've said, why is it okay for the dog to be in here? They're not wearing shoes either. Or actually, in King Soopers, they said to me once, you need to be in shoes, which actually it is their policy, and I didn't know that. It's not illegal, but it is their policy. But I said, so why? They said, well, it's a sanitation issue. I said, well, I'm not worried about my feet getting dirty, and they were stumped. Mm-hmm. And if they had said anything, my follow up would have been, I'm not worried about my feet getting dirty. When's the last time you washed your shoes? And they would have, had no answer for that. In Costco, I remember walking in one day, and there's a woman with her kids who were like 6 and 7. And it's like, Mommy, that means not wearing shoes. And Mom just didn't know what to do. So she said, well, why don't you ask him why? And so they came up to me and said, how come you're not wearing shoes? I said, do you ever go to the beach? And they go, yeah. Do you wear shoes at the beach? They said, no. I said, well, why don't we just pretend we're at the beach? And they went, oh, got it.
Oh, that's so cute.
They just loved it.
It's such a culture thing because, my husband's Kiwi, so I spend a lot of time down in New Zealand. And, in New Zealand, nobody wears shoes. Right. They're walking around with black feet in a supermarket.
Well, that was the inspiration for making our first sandal. Was I got tired of arguing about whether it was legal to get into a restaurant in bare feet. It is. They may have a policy, but there's nothing illegal about it. There's no health code violation, none of that. But we also had white carpeting, and my wife was going, yeah, this has got to stop. You got to have something on your feet.
She didn't make you have your little wash bowl at the front door. It's wash bowl and brush type thing.
It's my fantasy of having just a tiny little creek with warm water running through it, so people can wash their feet in moving creek water and then come into the house
before they go in. Yeah, because in New Zealand, in our house in New Zealand, I'm I just want to make a little permanent wash bowl here that with one of those foot brushes, and then you can go inside the house.
Yeah. No, I'm going to make the world's smallest water feature, and then it'll be a thing where you can put your feet in it.
I think that's a whole other business.
Oh, well, I've already got this one. I got to tell you, I was at an event for product companies, like startup product companies. And I ended up sitting next to a guy who I said, what do you do? He says, I'm making a adjustable weight medicine ball. And I went, oh my God, I'm so the perfect customer for that. How do you do it? What's the technology for adjusting the weight? He goes, I can't tell you that. It's a secret. I said, yeah, because what I'm going to do is drop my multi-million-dollar footwear brand to steal your stupid idea. And he kind of walks away a bit in a huff. And then he comes back 5 minutes later. He goes, good point. My apologies. Here's how I do it.
Wow.
Well, I guess going to those things, though, you do want to protect ideas like that. You never know what cops on.
Yeah, we're way too busy to steal an idea.
But I can see that the zero dirt foot fountains. As you come in.
I think you're onto it. I think you're definitely onto it.
That'll be the one that I steal.
You can have it. I just gave it to you. It's all yours.
Awesome. I'm a little bit like you, though. I'm good at giving the ideas, but I need a wife like yours or a partner like yours to make it happen.
I got to tell you, everybody needs a wife like mine. She's great.
And did you guys meet being active or?
No, I won't do the long story because we don't have time for that. No, we met when a bunch of mutual friends we all got together for brunch, and she happened to be there. The short version of the long story is I was there that day with my then fiance. We were going to go find a place to have a wedding that day. And my fiance, who was a tall Nordic woman and also tall and large, and I am neither of those, she had this idea about what tribe you're in. And so we were not in the same tribe. And she said, you should be getting married to someone like that. She's in your tribe. And I said, Dad, don't be ridiculous. Haven't dated anyone shorter than me in 10 years. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, holy crap, you're totally right. So for completely unrelated reasons, my then fiance and I split up. Lena and I knew each other for a couple of years before she was willing to let me even be her friend. And then we were friends for a couple of years. And then somehow we became a couple, and then we were engaged for 3.5 years. And now we've been a married couple for just shy of 20.
Mm. Do you have any kids?
No, we have.
Kids?
No, I mentioned 80 employees.
Oh, 80 employees. Yeah. I'm sure you're a funkle to a lot of kids out there, eh?
Yes, actually.
Because I am a 3-year-old, and for me to find barefoot shaped shoes for kids, which I think is the most important thing.
It is. It's
so and it's expensive.
Well, we're trying to solve both of those problems. Because the reason they're so expensive is because it doesn't cost much less to make shoes for kids than it does for adults. People think it's in the materials. It's in everything but the materials is where the cost comes from. So we have a new factory we're working with some slightly modified designs. And the goal is to go as far down the size chart as we can and make things affordable. And we also have a Facebook group where people can do a buy, sell, trade for kids' shoes. So if your kid outgrows a shoe, you can find someone who...
if they haven't totally shredded it.
Yeah. But Irene Davis, when she was at Harvard, she's now at the University of Southern Florida, her line is, if we just got kids wearing minimalist footwear, in 20 years, we wouldn't be treating adults for the billions of dollars of problems they currently are looking for solutions for.
Also, is that a little bit like the pharmaceutical company? Like, keep them over here so that we get paid over there? Or,
well, no,
not saying that all companies like that.
Really. But I'll tell you why it's a slightly not a great analogy, is that the joke is, here's how we know that modern footwear is complete bullshit. Because there's a multi-billion-dollar industry of products to make your footwear better for you. Insoles, arch support, orthotics, cushioning, all these things you can add to the shoe. The shoe companies know this stuff. Why don't they just build that into the shoe? Why aren't they selling it themselves? And the answer is because that doesn't work either. So it's not like there's, the difference is that there's not a single industry. There's the footwear manufacturers, there's the orthotic insole, et cetera, manufacturers. There's all these other ancillary businesses. So it just so happens, what's really the problem, it's twofold. One is that the footwear companies, through brilliant and misleading marketing, have convinced people that they are the problem. You are the problem, not the shoes. Shoes are great. You're the problem. Shoes are amazing. They make people run faster, even though they don't. But you're the problem. So, what are you talking to me for? And the other problem is that for reasons that I just don't understand, we are like, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. But in that story, the villagers got smart and eventually stopped running and here to see what's going on. But in the big shoe company that cried new forms of cushioning, motion control, and arch support, we never got smart. We just keep going back every time they announce that, despite the fact that the new one doesn't work any better than the old one, and because they've never shown any proof for that. And they've never said, hey, sorry about that crap we were selling for the last 5 years. So there's never been any transparency about that. I mean, FYI, one of the things in the footwear world, especially performance footwear, they talk about the energy return of their incredible foam. Well, there's a YouTube video that I reference all the time with a guy from Adidas, one of the top developers, saying there's no such thing as energy return. That's really a lie. What we're talking about is energy loss. And it's the only time I've seen someone in that industry admit the truth, that they are coming up with clever terms to ignore the fact that we can't violate the laws of physics. And all cushioning sucks energy out of your system.
Yeah, it's a dampener, right?
It's a dampener. Now, if you're the right weight running at the right speed, it dampens a little less than if you're not that weight and that speed, but it always sucks energy out of the system. What it also can do, though, is make it so the mechanoreceptors in your feet, the little pressure receptors in your feet, can't feel what's going on, but the force is still going into your body. And if you can't feel the force at the place that's designed to feel it, it ends up getting absorbed by joints that are not wired for that, instead of muscles, ligaments, and tendons that are meant to, be able to mitigate all that. Like, I don't care how much foam you put on the ground. If I ask you to jump off, my God, even a phone book, if anyone remembers what a phone book is, if I put 12 inches of foam on the ground and I elevated you 12 inches above that foam and asked you to jump onto the foam, you would not land on your heel and let the foam do all the work. You'd land midfoot or on the ball of your foot, and then you'd use your ankles, your knees, your hips, and your back to absorb that energy. Instead of what happens when people run with foam is they tend to overstride. And even if they don't overstride, they tend to land with their leg relatively straight and send a spike of force into their joints, bypassing their muscles, ligaments, and tendons. It just blows my mind. But like literally, even if I did take that phone book, so you're 3 inches off the ground, and I said, I want you to step off the phone book, land on one foot, and immediately start running, you would land with your foot right underneath your center of mass, on the ball of your foot, or slightly midfoot maybe, and you'd have perfect running form for that first stride.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it any different when you're running? Because really the amount of up and down bounce you have when you're running is about 3 or 4 inches. So why are you doing something different when you're running than you would if you started by just stepping off of a phone book? You shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because the shoe is getting in the way.
Interesting. So I have a question. What advice would you give somebody who's coming from a very controlled shoe into a shoe like a Xero Shoe?
I'm trying to think of a fun example. I was going to say something that I have a good analogy, but I was trying to think of a slightly better one. But I can't find it, so I'll give you the good one, not the great one. But now I'm going to work on the great one.
Awesome.
The big shoe companies, when they saw this minimalist thing was happening, this whole barefoot thing was happening, many of them said, "Oh, well, you can't just transition straight to one of those shoes or go barefoot. You need to go from a big stack height to slightly less until you're ready to go." Completely not true. They made that up. There was no evidence for it. In fact, quite the opposite. The evidence is that those shoes are the worst for you because there's just enough cushioning that you will still run with your typically not optimal form, but you can't feel that you're doing it wrong, and that makes it even worse. So the thing I say is, A, you want to go cold turkey. You want to just switch to barefoot or something like Xero Shoes, but you want to think of it like what you would do if you hadn't been to the gym for a few years. You're not going to just go back in and do your regular workout, or you're not going to continue whatever your workout was, from wherever it was. You're going to go back in, you're going to do like one set of bicep curls, and you're going to go home and you see how you feel a day or two later. And if you feel fine, next time you go in, maybe you'll add a little weight, maybe you add a rep, maybe you add a set based on however you feel. And then over time, you build up as you get better, stronger, and you're listening to the feedback you get. Now, granted, there's times where you'll do a little too much, you'll be sore, and you need to rest and get unsore, and then maybe do a little less weight the next time until you can start progressing again. That's just the way it is. Same idea. Start really, really small. Now, if you're just walking, maybe you can walk for an hour. Maybe you can walk for 2. If you're just standing, maybe you can stand for an hour or so. But you want to think of it like going to the gym because you're going to be using muscles, ligaments, and tendons either that you haven't used in a while or in a different way than you've used in a while. So part of it is getting your brain to wake up and go, "Oh, we're doing it right now. Okay, I can handle that." And some of it is just getting used to your muscles. Many people think that you just need to get stronger and you need to build up calluses on your feet. It's actually the opposite. You don't end up with calluses on your feet. That's a sign you're doing something wrong. And you don't have to, you will get stronger, but that's not a prerequisite. That's what's going to happen by just using your body correctly over time. So if you're running, I say go for take off your shoes or pick a pair of our shoes, find a nice, smooth, hard, flat surface, because that'll give you the most feedback, and go for a short run, like 20 seconds, that kind of short. Again, see how you feel the next day. If you feel like you're a little muscular sore, wait till you feel better, go out until you can do that 20 seconds without a problem. If you feel like maybe you hurt something, then you definitely want to pay attention to your form. And because it's about form, not footwear. It's just that modern footwear gets in the way of proper form. I'll say more about that in a second, perhaps. So you want to, if you feel like you kind of damaged something, the thing you want to do with your form is see if you can figure out how to get your feet underneath your body. Some people, when they hear I'm supposed to land on the ball of my foot, they just reach out with their foot way in front of their body and point their toes. Worst thing you could do, because that part of your body is not designed to handle force that way. But if you get your foot underneath your body, you can't help but land basically on the ball of your foot, maybe flat-footed. There's just no way around it. And you want to probably just pick up your cadence, the number of steps per minute, without running faster. It'll feel weird because you're used to what you're used to. But if you just pick up your cadence just a tiny bit, like 5 steps per minute tops, that will cure a lot of ills because you can't overstride and have your foot way in front of you when your cadence is a little higher because you don't have enough time to get your foot off the ground if you have it landing way in front of you. So picking up your cadence can be really helpful. You might need some video assistance. Take a video of you running from the side. Find someone who knows how to take a look at that and have them take a gander. But and then there's cues. Cues like you get your feet underneath you. Imagine that you're Fred Flintstone starting your car and his feet are behind him and they never catch up to him. Try and do that. Or try to think about lifting your foot off the ground before it even hits the ground. So you don't want to land on the ground. You want your foot to barely touch the ground the way any point on a wheel barely touches the ground, just like that. And these cues are just helping you discover what you would naturally figure out on your own eventually. These are just to speed up the learning process. Mm-hmm. So treat it like going to the gym, start slow, listen to your body. You're going to do too much too soon sometimes because we all do. There's no way to know in advance. But over time, you get smarter about this and you become your own coach, which is a much better deal than having to rely on somebody else to tell you something that is possibly wrong. I'm going to recommend a book. If you haven't read Born to Run, read Born to Run, but more importantly, get Born to Run 2, which is called the Ultimate Training Guide about how to make this transition to natural running. And it's a great book. And I'm also biased, even though it is a great book, I'm biased because Chris McDougall, who wrote Born to Run, and Eric Orton, who's been his coach, they both wrote Born to Run 2. And there's a footwear section, and they asked me to send them some shoes to see if they liked them. And now they're our partners because they never want to wear anything else. And we've made shoes with them.
Oh, awesome.
That's awesome.
Okay, so to recap that, you can go from a full control into a minimalist shoe.
You want to. Anything else is not going to, it's literally not going to work. It's the simplest thing I can say.
You just have to graduate your time.
But I also need to clarify, there are companies selling products they call minimalist that aren't in various ways. Either they're not foot shaped, so what's the point of that?
Sure.
Or too narrow in some other way, or they still have some heel lift. They still have too much cushioning. So the key to a minimalist shoe is as little cushioning as you can possibly get away with, because anything more than just a few millimeters of something relatively dense is, again, sucking energy out of the system and making it hard for you to feel, because it's about the feedback that leads to changing your gait naturally. Again, you want something light, you want something really flexible, ideally something durable, and just be on the lookout, because as this idea is getting more and more popular, there are more and more companies coming into the space selling things they're calling barefoot, they're calling minimalist. And if you compare it to us or Vivo Barefoot in particular, you'll see that it's not even close.
Now, Stephen, you've gotten a couple pairs of Barefoot Science, right? Have you tried them out? Have you been in them? Like, what do you think about them? You're pulling off a shoe, showing us that I can see them.
To be totally candid, I'm on level 6. And I'm
wow. How long has it taken you to get to level 6?
I don't remember, because I don't remember what I had for breakfast. So I don't.
Ballpark. Over a month?
Yeah, over a month.
Okay.
Mostly because I really wanted to, because I tried Barefoot Science before, and I never adjusted to whichever level I tried. I know I've done something stupid, I don't remember, but it's they were always problematic for me. And so I went, all right, I'm going to put it away. And then I decided to try again. Actually, you know what? I probably started somewhere December, January-ish.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm iffy about that because I had some medical issues going on at the beginning of the year, so time is a bit of a blur. But I've been in level 6 for at least 6 weeks because I want to get to the point where I'm just not noticing them at all.
That's exactly how you're supposed to do, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's still, and that's where I am most of the time. But I'm in a weird situation because while I had comedy level flat feet my whole life, family joke level, step out of a hot tub or a pool and you see an oval with a couple of dots in front of it, just from, going barefoot at all and being in Xero Shoes, very quickly my foot shape changed, my feet got much stronger. And so arch height is predominantly genetic. So while I didn't have some significant noticeable arch, I had crazy strong feet to begin with. So I have been taking pictures along the way. I'll be very curious to see what the sort of before and after turns into. Let's say this. There are many, many products people have sent me that I have practically thrown away because either philosophically, it makes no sense. From a physics standpoint, it makes no sense. Logically, it makes no sense. Or my own experience went, this is at best maybe a placebo. Not the case here. So the fact that I'm still doing this after this many months means that I'm still intrigued, which is a rare situation given the number of things people send me on a regular basis to try out, where maybe only 1 out of 20 makes it through my testing and my research.
That's interesting.
Fair enough. So when you're talking to these people who are so hooked on cushion and blah, blah, do you find that there's one idea that you can throw out there that's more popular than most to kind of make them be like, oh, maybe I should change what I'm doing,
You see me getting excited? Yes. So we have a website that we're launching. It was supposed to be 2 days ago, so I don't know what's happening now. That is going to be one of the things that it's going to be doing is offering an ebook that I created that is specifically for people who think I have a case of cranial-rectal reorientation syndrome. That's having my head up my butt for people who haven't done the math. And they're running in, whatever other shoe they're running in, and they think this whole barefoot thing is bullshit. My response is great. Let me just show you a scientifically proven way to reduce your risk of running injuries by 250% over the course of a year. That's how long the study went. And here it is. Here's the study. And what it showed is that if you do an 8-week foot strengthening exercise program, you're running in whatever shoe you want, your risk of injury is 250% less than those people who did not do the exercise program. Now, even though you can do the exercise program in minutes a day while you're watching TV, I know most people will not do the exercise program. That's okay, because here's another piece of research that showed that just walking in shoes like ours builds foot muscle strength as much as that same exercise program. So let's do the math in reverse. Walking in our shoes builds foot strength as much as an exercise program that's shown to reduce your risk of injury by 250%. Running in whatever you want to run in. So don't run in these. Wear them when you're done running, when you're walking, when you're hiking, when you're going to work, when you're doing whatever you're doing, which, by the way, will make those super expensive big cushion shoes last longer too. So that's my recommendation for people who say, I'm not going to go there. And now it's a bit of a Trojan horse because, like we said at the beginning, once you get used to doing this, you just can't go back.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get used to letting your toes spread, you can't put your foot in something that squeezes your toes together. So hopefully people will get the hint.
Is it possible that we can make that study available to everybody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I will send you, I'll send you the ebook and you can either distribute it as soon as the website goes up, you can do whatever you want with it. And because I'm just trying to get it out there. And the studies are referenced in there. If you just want to reference the 2 studies on your own, it's public information. I can't force you to promote my ebook.
Okay. Yeah, because as a clinician, I run into that all the time where people come in and they have foot-related or lower extremity issues going on. And when I bring up shoes, gosh, I swear it's like religion for people. It's like, I spend
it's
big
worse
money
than
on shoes.
It's worse than religion. It's their identity. No one actually thinks they are like Jesus when they're going to church, but people do think they are like Mike when they put on a pair of Air Jordans. It's weird. But for you as a clinician, it's like, I want to give you an exercise program, but I know, frankly, you're probably not going to do it. But what I found is that if you literally just walk around in these shoes, you get the same benefit. So when you're not running in those things, just walk around in these. Start with an hour a day. Just like whatever, and eventually just keep it up. There is another bit of fun research you'll like. One of the researchers from my ebook actually studied elderly women who had knee osteoarthritis, and she had them walking around in a pair of minimalist shoes. And over, I can't remember, maybe it was 6 months, their KO either disappeared or the pain was reduced so much they basically were off their pain medication. And the reason why is that they were not walking in a way that was putting force into their knee. And they started using the muscles, ligaments, and tendons. Do you know how they test knee osteoarthritis drugs?
No.
Oh, this is good. Well, first you need something that has knee osteoarthritis. So they take a rabbit and they extend its leg, and then they just keep hitting its heel, which puts force into the bone to put force into the knee joint, and then they get arthritis. So then when they want to test the new drug against the control is stop hitting the rabbit's leg, and they see what that does compared to the medication. Well, when they stop hitting the rabbit's leg, guess what happens? The arthritis goes away.
Wow.
This is not rocket science. So same thing is happening to humans.
Yeah, that's why I need that study so I can hand it out to my patients that they come in and they've already got the shoe thing figured out. I spend good money on shoes. Yeah. The other term I like that just makes me laugh is, I've got proper footwear. And it's like, what boxes need to be checked in order for something, a pair of shoes to be proper?
I can tell you, cushioning, motion control, arch support.
Well, there you go.
That's what they've learned. That's what they've been told. That's what happened. They said a good feet. Oh, and an orthotic.
And an orthotic, yeah.
So, because the shoe isn't good enough. And you know what? I got to tell you a fun story. I was at the International Foot and Ankle Biomechanics Conference with Irene Davis. Not that we were there together. She happened to be there. And there's a guy there who's like one of the top orthotics researchers in the world. And he says, let me try your shoes. And so I said, cool. So he tried them with and without his orthotics. And he said, so what'd you notice? I said, well, what'd you notice? He goes, they felt really comfortable and I felt fine. I said, cool. So without the orthotic, your right foot was pronating a little more than your left foot. than it was when you had the orthotic in. But you didn't notice. That's an important thing. What I can tell you is over time, your feet are going to get stronger. Your ankles are going to get stronger. You'll be using them differently, and you'll be fine. And he didn't, kind of didn't really believe me, but that's okay. So then he goes to Irene and he says, I'm going to get these shoes, but I'm going to wear them with my orthotics, thinking she was going to, have an argument with him. She goes, cool, that's fine. In a month, shave down the orthotic by 50%. And then a month later, shave it down by another 50%. And a month later, throw it away. Tell me what happens. He's like, oh. And ironically, if you, for whatever reason, are going to wear an orthotic, we're the best platform for that because it's flat. And so there's not a built-in arch that's already getting in the way of whatever you're building into the orthotic. Sure. And we don't have a big, thick foam midsole that as it wears out on the inside faster than the outside or vice versa and changes the whole geometry that the orthotic's trying to address anyway. So, we're a better platform. But again, we have no sense of history. Orthotics were never meant to be worn full time. They were meant to be worn like you put a cast on your arm to allow you to function as much as you can without moving the joints so that you're not straining whatever the problem is. The research, look, it's move it or lose it. If you put your arm in a cast, it doesn't come out stronger. If you want it stronger, you have to move it and under some resistance, ideally. No different with your foot. If you immobilize your foot by putting arch support, the research shows that you lose up to 17% of the muscle mass and strengthen your foot in as little as 12 weeks. Because it's just like putting your foot in a cast.
Yeah, I don't never really got how people don't see that having your foot, casted or molded in a static position and then putting it in a movement situation helps. Like
I can tell you why. Because it's the same reason lying down feels good. You're not using your muscles, ligaments, and tendons. You're resting. Resting feels good. Do it long enough, you can't stand up again. So if you're not having to, so the reason that they develop arch support in shoes to begin with is once you elevate your heel and people are landing on your heel, which by the way is a ball, so now you need to build in motion control, which never works because no amount of foam can handle the amount of force you put into the ground when you're walking or running. Just doesn't happen. But you also tend to land with your foot further out in front of you. And by the time your foot comes down to the ground, it's basically your plantar fascia are fully extended, like your arm being fully extended. And we know that when your arm is fully extended, you can't hold as much weight as if your arm was, halfway bent at 90 degrees, where you can hold much more weight. Like you can hold a weight at 90 degrees that you couldn't move at all when your arm is extended. So when your foot is fully extended, you're putting your plantar fascia in a weak position when it's supposed to be in a strong position. And that creates strain, and that can lead to plantar fasciitis or plantar fasciosis. So when you put arch support in, you don't need to worry about using your plantar fascia. So it's resting, but that means you get weaker.
Yeah, it's funny. We don't see people wearing the foam neck braces anymore, or at the gym, you don't see people wearing the their weight belts unless they're doing like 1 rep max kind of deadlift squats.
Well, but people have a misunderstanding about that. So first of all, the neck brace is a perfect analogy. It's one that Irene uses. If you had a whiplash accident or an accident where you had whiplash, and you went to the doctor and he says, you're gonna have to wear this neck brace for the rest of your life, you'd go find another doctor because you know that that's just ridiculous. But that's basically what they're saying when you put an orthotic in someone's shoe, and they're putting it in your shoe for things that may have nothing to do with your feet. Could be your ankles, your knees, your hips, your back, your neck, God knows what. So whole different thing. And then, oh crap, what's the second part you said? Going to the gym. People have a misunderstanding about what a weight belt does. A weight belt isn't there for support. You don't tighten it to give you support and make you weak. If you're a smart lifter, if you're a power lifter and you know what it's for, the weight belt is there not to hold you in, but for you to press out against it. Right. To help you create internal tension. About whether you're doing it correctly. It's not providing support. It's reminding you how to support yourself.
Most people don't know that. And, back in the day, like in the 80s, what was the Bally Fitness or whatever, everybody, they were doing.
Well, Gold's Gym too.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Gold's Gym as well.
Yeah. Everybody was wearing
a weight belt to do curls. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And step ups and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was under there's another one. These misconceptions is what drives a lot of sales for certain kinds of product. So orthotics is one of those. And with a weight belt, it's another thing. People got the wrong idea about what it's for, and they think it's about support, and it's not. But support, that word, is something that we feel like we want it. Who doesn't want support? I mean, that sounds like a great thing. The joke is, your body can support you better than any man-made thing that's ever been made, other than an exoskeleton. But then, you're not the one doing the movement, and you're not going to wear an exoskeleton.
What about, did you ever go to Home Depot and they had all their employees with these big weight belts on with the suspenders?
Right.
And they bailed on those. They don't wear those anymore.
Yeah.
I think they were doing that to prevent injury.
Well, that was for like lifting, it's like when they're lifting refrigerators and stuff, they have those like
the cool straps,
the suspenders that it does do something.
Well, that's a different story.
That's a little bit different. Those
no, those things are
for women.
Those things are actually super cool because what they're doing. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. If you look on YouTube for other uses of a seatbelt, one of them is you can move your own car if you. Yeah. So it's the same idea with some of the lifting accessories they've come up with. So there's one where, you put these bands around your forearm and you like put your hand on the refrigerator and you can just lift the refrigerator, because basically it's making it so you're lifting with your legs, but using your forearm as a lever or fulcrum. So you're not having to use your grip, but it's a fake out way of lifting with your legs while using your hands. I love stuff like that.
That's clever though. Yeah. That's really, so are you using any sort of technology to measure like gait or anything? Like Scott, he uses a lot of OptiGate.
We're not currently. What we have instead is 70,000 reviews from people who said, "Holy crap, you changed my life." And my fill in the blank is feeling better than ever, or has gone away, or whatever it is. And also we don't have we didn't have the space for anything like that. We now have a big warehouse, and we have a showroom in our warehouse where people can go and buy stuff there. And we do have, we are just doing some 3D foot scanning there because we want to see what kind of correlation there is between someone's actual foot length and width and which shoe size they prefer. Because everyone loves to say, "I'm a true size 9." It's like, there's no such thing. I could take 3 people with identical feet, put them in the same shoe, and it'll be like Goldilocks about whether it fits or not. So, because personal preference is a huge piece of the puzzle. I am trying to crack the code on finding a real methodology for taking your foot and using that to determine what the right size is, or more accurately, whether a shoe will fit you at all. And if not, where the problem is. And if so, what you might need to pay attention to. And I've got a big meeting about this on Monday with some guys. So I've got a patent about that. But we're not doing any gait stuff. I got to tell you, mostly because now that I think of it, because of what I saw when I was in the lab with Bill Sands. So what he would do in his lab is he'd put you in your favorite running shoe, and he'd put you on this giant treadmill he had. It was like 5 feet by 10 feet. And he'd have you run in that shoe, and then he had you take off your shoes and go barefoot. And 90% of the people immediately had better form from being barefoot without any intervention. And that missing 10%, I could give them a few tips in 30 seconds, and then suddenly they'd have good form too. Because when you're barefoot, doing it wrong hurts. Doing it right feels great. And you can tell the difference. So, and I watched so much gait activity from looking at videos from his lab. We did a little pilot study comparing our sandals to barefoot to someone's favorite shoe to 5 fingers. And people wearing our sandals had the same form that when they were barefoot. And in 5 fingers, that wasn't true. And of course, in their regular shoes, it wasn't true. So I've seen it enough times, and I've heard it enough times that we haven't gone down that road. And P.S., we don't have the kind of cash to buy some of those super expensive analytical systems. Where we're relying on now is people who are doing independent research, and they're using our shoes for it. So we'll get that data from. There's cool research going on. The CDC is sponsoring research on balance in the elderly using our shoes. So I'm very much looking forward to that. There's a bunch of research about plantar fasciitis in our shoes. I'm very curious to see when that gets done, because we all pretty much know what's going to happen. And we're not paying for this research. We're just providing footwear.
Scott, because Scott, you do some testing at your lab. Have you done anything with the Xero Shoes yet, or do you have anything to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so we've done our initial baseline testing with a few people just before. Like, we took a baseline without the Xero Shoes, and then a baseline with the Xero Shoes, and then they're going to spend time in them. Some will have no barefoot science in them. Some will. And we're just going to look at what the data tells us.
Yeah.
That's coming down the pipeline. That's yet to come. Okay.
Yeah. I got Xero Shoes on right now, as a matter of fact, and I quite enjoy them. Yeah.
I got some coming my way, and I'm like pretty excited to get in them. I'll tell you that much.
Leather ones. But just to follow up with what you were saying about running earlier, is like when I was a kid, at recess, we'd all play out in the field in the back, and I was always the fastest runner, but I would always have to take my shoes off. And when it came to track and field day, we had to run on the track, and they wouldn't allow us to be barefoot. And I sucked. I never got the ribbon for any of the running races, but take the shoes off, and I could clean anybody that wanted to go against me at the time.
We've seen that a bunch. My wife's niece was running cross country in high school and said, I can't wear these shoes you're telling me to wear. I've got to wear these sandals, like this, like 4 millimeters of rubber strapped to her foot. And they made her practically sign the Magna Carta to, prove that if anything happened, that they weren't responsible and whatever. And she was crushing everybody.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It functions so much better when it's not confined in a coffin, as our friend says. He calls those controlled shoes coffins.
Yes, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure I coined the term foot coffin 13 years ago.
Did you?
Is that one of your keywords that you own?
It's not actually, although I should.
You should look into that.
I got to see if anyone owns footcoffin.com. That would be pretty funny.
There you go.
And then you just have it go straight to maybe not straight to your
Well, we have
anti.
Yeah, go straight to the page that explains what that's all about. No one's searching.
It goes to your book. It goes to your new ebook.
There we go. But here's the thing. No one is searching for foot coffin. So
Yeah. But looking at the shoes behind you there, Steve, as somebody that does shoe testing on a regular basis, I wish I could have access to a shoe store that had an Optigate system in there, so maybe this particular model of the Xero isn't the best functionality. I mean, what I find is just because a shoe is comfortable doesn't mean it's optimal as far as functionality goes. But generally, if a shoe is uncomfortable, the functionality is not good on it.
Yeah.
But to be able to pick from a shelf like what you have there, to be able to sort of fine tune to a little higher degree what shoe would be best for that individual. And
the only thing I'd add to that is it depends on, there's two issues. One is it depends on what someone's doing. So if they're lifting weights, that's one thing. If they're running, that's one thing. If they're running trails, that's different than running roads versus running track. If they are, just wearing things casually at the beach. I mean, so there's that component as well. And there's the other thing, which is while the kinematics are the same on a treadmill, for example, the muscle activation is not the same. So like if you watch me on a treadmill, I overstride and heel strike like crazy because I'm just trying to catch the treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
Is your speed not dialed in?
So, I don't know what it is. It's just, I think what happens for me, especially when I'm at full speed, where I'm just nervous. I mean, if I spent more time on that treadmill, I'm sure I'd figure it out, but it just makes me nervous.
Well, why would you want to do that? You want to run outside.
I don't. I don't. I go outside. But I just noticed there's just a couple of videos of me on a treadmill where they said, how can you sprint like that? And I mean, this is like 10 years ago when I first got tested in Bill Sand's lab. He goes, I'm running 23 miles an hour. He goes, but you're like overstriding. How's that even possible? And all I could think was, I'm just doing it because I'm on your treadmill and I'm terrified because it's just
right. Because you're not used to that moving platform, right?
Yeah.
And if you screw up and you fall, that's like one hell of a fall off that treadmill at 23 miles an hour.
He puts you in like a Mission Impossible harness. So if you fall, you end up just floating over the treadmill. Super fun. But maybe I get used to it. But the thing with the treadmill is like in your brain, all I need to do is get my foot in the right place and the treadmill is going to take care of the rest.
Yes.
So it's just hard to get over that because that's just the easier thing to do. So it's treadmills are just not optimal because it's just not look, you can run all winter long in a treadmill. You go out for the first spring day and it's like, how come I can't run?
Yeah.
You're using your muscles differently.
This is tiring.
Yeah. It's like when I was a gymnast, I broke my foot because I had a bet that I could do a standing backflip anywhere. So one of the girls said, well, then do it on beam. So I did it on beam. My foot slipped and kind of twisted and I broke my foot. And so I figured, while I got a cast on, this is the perfect opportunity to just do all this upper body strength work. So I was doing just a ton of upper body strength work, and my calves came off and I couldn't do anything because I was out of balance.
Oh.
It was
Right.
very embarrassing.
Again, one
Interesting.
question about the, picking the optimal shoe or the best shoe. Most feet are not exactly the same size. They're like testicles and breasts, slightly different, And so
Wait, let me clarify. Testicles and breasts are very different from each other, just in case you don't know that. Oh, did you mean something different than that?
Right to left, right to left.
Okay. Yeah, I thought we were going to take this conversation in a whole new direction. Okay.
No. But generally, feet are not
Correct.
Generally, one is more pronated than others in a lot of cases, and slightly different size.
Yeah.
So getting people into one shoe might fit perfectly, and the other one might be off. Is what I'm saying.
Well, let's look at some math. The difference between a 8 and an 8.5 is just shy of 4 millimeters, less than a quarter of an inch.
Okay.
So most of the time, for most people, that size difference is inconsequential.
Okay.
For some people, it's significant. And I actually was trying to find a way to accommodate that by, like, if your feet were 8 and 8.5, I was going to try and hook you up with someone who was 8.5 and 8, the other way around.
Yeah.
But we couldn't find a way to manage the inventory without ending up having, a lot of half pairs floating around. And we couldn't figure out a way to handle the monetary component of it. It's a really fun idea, but it's just not technically possible. Certainly not for us at this time.
Yeah. I've got one patient with a size 12 and one size 16 foot.
That's cool. What does he do with the Bigfoot?
Well, he also owns the world's largest hands, and this it's a genetic anomaly, is what it is.
Yeah, of course,
right?
Of course.
So he's the live version of Popeye, I think they call him.
That's wild.
That's unreal.
Yeah, it's like when my favorite is when someone will call me and go, "How come you don't make shoes for me?" I go, "What do you mean?" They go, "Well, I'm a size 17." I go, "Because there's 5 of you."
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I say, we go up to size 15, and I don't remember what the number is, but we bought, quite a number of them because there's a lot of the people who are complaining complain loudly. So like, I need a 15. So we made 15s. We sell so few of them because there are just so few people who are that size. Now we are going to be making some bigger shoes because we're doing some stuff with a bunch of basketball players. But even then, we're not going to be making a whole lot of them because there's just not that many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always wonder about like the basketball players, and you look at their shoes and like, but like Shaq, did Nike make custom shoes for someone like Shaq or?
Absolutely.
So they're not squeezing their feet in, but their toe box still looks like narrow.
Oh yeah, if you look at Shaq's feet, or if you saw pictures of Kobe's feet, or a bunch of these guys, it looked like they either stepped on an IED or they were, Chinese women from the 1800s where they were getting their feet bound.
yes.
It's crazy town. And that's just from wearing bad shoes to begin with that aren't letting their feet work naturally.
Before they could get custom shoes. It happened way before they could get custom shoes.
Oh, well, they get custom shoes because that's the only thing they could wear. And the irony there is that, one of these athletes will be wearing a shoe and everyone else, normal people, decide to buy it. They're getting a completely different product.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that with a lot of pros, that have their pro model. It's like, that's not the model that the regular consumer gets.
Well, you may know this one. I mean, there's pros who are sponsored by, let's say, Nike, but they prefer Adidas, and they just buy the Adi shoes, they pull the stripes off, and they sew a swoosh on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
More than either company would like to admit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, it's your talent. Like, you can't mess with their mojo, man. But
This is the thing.
or a logo.
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I say to people when they say, should I switch to barefoot shoes? I go, are you a professional runner? And they go, yeah. I go, well, then don't do it unless you feel the need to because you have some issue where you think this could be the solution. Or you're just doing this as part of your training to strengthen your feet, or you're doing it in the off season just to see what's going on. But I would never recommend you do anything that could jeopardize your livelihood, even though I don't think that it would. Don't be a bonehead.
Yeah.
You ever seen Usain Bolt run?
Not only have I, but I was in Berlin when he set the world record. I was at the 70-meter mark, about 7 rows off the track. And what I can tell you is that when someone runs by you at about 29 miles an hour, fast enough to get a speeding ticket in my neighborhood, here's what your brain does. Like, what? It just doesn't look real. It's wild.
Oh.
Why do you ask?
Well, the video that I saw, I don't want to say a train wreck, but it didn't look perfect. But the point, to your point, is that how do you convince somebody like that to change what they're doing when they're winning everything? You don't.
You don't. You absolutely don't. You know, a better example, I would argue, is a former world champion, Otto Bolden. Otto, and he's ATO, his right foot was way everted, way pointing out. And people argued that he got like that because he played soccer as a kid. Don't know, don't care. But the guy was the world's fastest man with that wacky ass foot. So, and people like to say, imagine what would happen if he straightened out his foot. It's like, yeah, he wouldn't be able to run. So, you know, who knows what would happen? We have no way of knowing what would happen. If it's working, don't change it.
Yeah, especially at that level of competition.
Yeah, and at that level, if you look at the common factors for sprinting, there's a slow motion video of Bolt from one race. I don't remember which. I don't think it was Berlin. And he's closest to the camera. And you look at his form and people are like going, that's amazing. Then you look at the form of all the other 7 runners in that race. It looks exactly the same as his, because that's what sprinting looks like. And so frankly, the only time it starts to change is in the last 20 meters where people start to fall apart a little bit. So, but up until then, you know, everyone looks really, really good and pretty much the same because that's how you do it. And that goes back to what I'm learning is there's still like little things where, and sprinting is weird because it is this bilateral thing where what you're doing with your right arm affects your left leg and vice versa.
Yeah.
And where your hand goes affects what your feet do in weird ways. And so there's just like, and everyone's a little imbalanced. And I got a broken spine and scoliosis and all this crazy stuff. So there's just these little things that I'm trying to work around so that I can just make these tiny little changes to my form that will make a big difference. And so, yeah, watching Bolt run, when you say not quite a train wreck, what did you notice when you were watching him run or watching the video?
Well, it was a number of years ago, but what looked to me like he was at excessive pronation from the view that I was looking at.
Yeah, here's the thing about pronation in sprinters in particular and runners in general. There's no evidence that it makes a difference, that it's just an individual thing. And there hasn't been any evidence that it improves performance or reduces injuries by affecting how someone pronates. In fact, arguably, when you're thinking of the lower limb as the spring mass model, the pronation is part of the spring system. If you watch, I don't know about Chogi, but some of the former world champion marathoners, I mean, their ankle bone would practically, hit the ground when they were running. And these guys are running 13 miles an hour for, 2 hours. So again, it's one of those things to say, well, imagine if they weren't pronating. I don't know, maybe that's why they're running 13 miles an hour for 2 hours. So it's very tricky to try to, like you were just saying, you second guess someone who's doing something at an astronomically advanced level it's an interesting intellectual exercise, but frankly, we'll never get an opportunity to test it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, when we look at excessive pronation with the Optigate, where we measure more ground contact time.
That's a whole different game.
Yeah. So you're spending more time pronating than what you should. So therefore your ground contact time. So for example, if somebody's GCT is 500 milliseconds and we were able to strengthen the foot and so forth, and with some reactive strength index testing and training, we got it down to, let's say, 0.250, a quarter second. Then every 4 times that foot touches the ground, you're to the finish line 1 second sooner.
Right. If you do the math on sprinters, on average, ground contact time is below 1/10 of a second. And regardless of what people are doing with their feet, I mean, even, old guys like me, it's still ridiculously short. The other thing, and you probably know this too, it's tricky to do analysis, especially video analysis on, the reason there's not a lot of research on sprinting is A, there aren't a lot of sprinters, and B, it's really hard to do the research. because of what you need. And the biggest thing you need is A, you need to have people out in the wild, and B, basically you need like a 20-meter long force plate, because that's where you're going to, between combining force plate data with any of the video data, that's kind of what you need to do, combine. Because if you're just watching the video, it can be very deceptive. And even with the OptiGate.
Sure. Absolutely. But they do have 20-meter OptiGate systems for that purpose.
Yeah. I'll have to play with that someday.
Oh yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's the thing that I said the other day. I was on this panel discussion at the American College of Sports Medicine, and a guy from Brooks was on the panel. And at one point he said, we're trying to put spring in your step and propel you forward. And I took the microphone and I said, can I be mildly obnoxious for 30 seconds? And he said, sure, go ahead. I said, nothing puts spring in your step, nothing propels you forward. Because physics, like we said before, all foam sucks energy out of the system. If there was something that propelled you forward or give you an extra spring, you can see it on force plate data. And if you had the force plate data, you'd show the force plate data. But no one shows the force plate data when they make claims like that, because that's not what happens, because physics. And he took the microphone back and said, yeah, we can't violate the laws of physics. We're just trying to give you a comfortable run. It's like, okie doke.
Yeah, I wish I was there to have witnessed that.
I think the recording will be made public at some point. So,
oh, good. Awesome.
You're that guy that you bring to the party. Yeah, you're like, oh, what are you? Nah, actually, what you're saying?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Boy, it's
just down to earth.
Well, this is the thing. My presentation, if you see it, the Brooks presentation was very science-y. It wasn't actual good science; it just looked science-y. So for people who know how to evaluate it, it was could be convincing. Mine was just all common sense. Like, is stronger better than weaker, or better yet, is weaker better than stronger? Is imbalance better than balance? Is misalignment better than alignment? Is numbness better than feeling? I did it a slightly different way, but same idea. Is what's another one? Is immobility better than movement? And the answer is no for all of those. Okay, so we agree. Things like strength, balance, feeling, movement, feedback, these are things that are important. Okay, cool. Now that we agree, let's take a look at a regular shoe compared to a Xero shoe, and tell me which one supports the idea of strength, movement, et cetera, and which one gets
these pillars.
And it's like, like the alignment. So here's a shoe with heel lift. Well, that changes your alignment. Okay, so we're done on that one. So strength is about movement. So which shoe lets your foot move? That's an easy one. Balance is about, or feeling, is you got all these nerve endings in your sole for a reason. So how much can you feel through, 2 inches of foam, or an inch of foam, or a half an inch of foam? Not very much. And it's like, just went down one after another. And it's like, you can't, if you argue with it, based on what? Because all these things make sense. They're all just logical. And the only reason people would argue is that even in the face of what they know to be true, they still need to hold on to their identity/beliefs. Well, I'm a special little snowflake and I need this shoe. Or I want to be like Mike and so I need this shoe. Or I don't believe you because you're a tiny little company compared to these billion-dollar companies. Why would they lie to me? So, as if there haven't been billion-dollar companies that have lied to us. So,
yeah. And lots of food companies as well that are out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we all have an opinion about big pharma and big tobacco and even big government. People don't know that there really is a thing that's big shoe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Almost every industry. Yeah. I love it. I love that. I love how you got those 5 pillars and you're just like, this is it. Like, you had to support, or,
Yeah.
I love that, Stephen. That's great. I love that. Yeah.
It's been 13 years of just working on how to communicate this in a way that can impact the most people to try what we're doing. I'm not going to say it's perfect for everybody, for everything. I will say it's great for most people, for most things. I mean, the vast majority for both. But I just want to be able to have a reasonable, and I don't want to say investigation. I want people to be able to, think about things clearly and make intelligent decisions instead of being swayed by bullshit marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Adidas, when they came up with their Boost foam, they did a ad where they basically took like a 2-pound steel ball and bounced it off concrete, and it barely bounces. Then they bounce it off the, quote, other company's foam. No one ever uses that foam. Bounce a few times. Then they bounce it off the Boost foam. And the first bounce went up about 30% from the height that they dropped it from. And so if they dropped it from, a meter, it went up 30 centimeters. And it bounced like 10 times. Well, I've been a physics guy since I was 14. And I knew the Exploratorium Museum in San Francisco has an exhibit where they take a steel ball and you drop it through a plexiglass plate with a hole in it, and it hits a steel plate with concrete underneath it. The first bounce hits the plexiglass plate that you dropped it through. It bounces basically to 99% of the height that you dropped it from. And then it bounces 260 more times. That's how physics works. But if you don't know things like that, you go, ooh, that Boost foam, that's really going to put bounce in my step. Nope. It's going to suck energy out of your system just like everything else.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wow.
We'll get there.
Yeah, one day. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on Born to be Barefoot. It's been an amazing conversation with you. Scott, thank you so much for coming on as my guest host and holding it out for Stuart. Stephen, is there any plugs you want to throw out there that you want people to go to after listening to this podcast? What do you want to say?
Go to Nike.com, get whatever you want. So you can find us at Xero Shoes, XeroShoes.com or XeroShoes.eu if you're in the EU, or if you're in the UK, XeroShoes.co.uk. And on social media, we're at Xero Shoes or /Xero Shoes, wherever you happen to at or slash. And most importantly, we want people to go out and have fun and live life feet first. And of course, Katie, I want to hear what happens when you get your shoes. Let me know what your experience is.
No, I'd love to. And how about your book that's coming out? Can you direct people to a specific website for your ebook? Or
yeah, I'll do it. But again, it might say coming soon if you come there before it's going to launch. But that's going to be at footweartruth.com. And if you want to go directly to the ebook, it's footweartruth.com/250, like the percentage improvement in running injury reduction if you do an exercise program.
Key. I like that. Yeah, I like that. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on. To our listeners out there, if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button or follow button to come back and hear great guests like Stephen here. Scott, thank you again for coming on. And to everybody out there, hope you are all born to be barefoot. So go out there and do it.
Thanks, Steve.
Pleasure. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Born to be Barefoot podcast with myself, Katie Tsuyuki, and the wonderful Stuart Gordon. Please remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star review. We'll see you guys next week.